ritualistic things, crazy. How where the napkin goes in the sleeve and how you tuck the thing, and every little thing so ritualized, and so much consciousness of present moment is really what it's all about. And I really appreciated how much it's the same thing we're trying to do in yoga. In my mind, I saw so much similarity. Even though the outer form is so different, the inner form was the same. And I tried to communicate that to her through his translation after the thing was over. And she got it, and she says, wow, I had no idea yoga was like that. I just thought yoga was about stretching. She says, do you think I could come to your class? She'd never done yoga before. She's probably 75 years old. I'd been teaching a teacher's intensive I'd already done 2 nights. It's an evening class. Teacher's intensive focused on back pains. And we'd completed 2, and the only class that she'd come to was that evening, which was the 3rd of the 3 class session on back pains for teachers. And I'm like, oh, I'd love her to come, but I just don't know if it's the right class. And so I said, okay, let's do it. So Manish, I said, don't let her hurt herself. Stay on her the whole time. What I had done in the second night of the teacher's class was I was teaching bridge pose, teaching the alignment principles that we worked on yesterday, how to count to 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and how to work from the ground up, the same ideas that we're playing with yesterday. And that if you really understand how to prepare yourself, how to set yourself up to basically, imagine you're laying on your back and you bend your knees, getting ready for bridge pose, right? Everybody knows Setu Bandha Sarvangasana. And find Samastiti in that position. You with me? Mm-hmm. Forget about coming up. Understand the alignment and the actions that we cultivate in Samastiti, in that position. And then we start to drive with our breath into the root. And you let the pose come as a result of that. Okay? So I talked them through that the second night, and I said, tomorrow, I'm not going to say anything about lifting your hips. I'm just going to talk to you about the breath and the roots and the setup for the preparation and the alignments and the actions. And if the time comes and you feel like your hips want to lift, let them lift. So 3rd night, she's in the class and we're going through and we do a bunch of other stuff and we get to the point where we're going to do that. And I'm giving the instructions and nobody's lifting their pelvis. And I'm thinking, oh, there's something wrong with my teaching. I'm not getting it right. And I look, and the only one in the room who came up was her. She'd never done yoga before. Her English wasn't really that good. You know, it was being translated into Japanese, and she's the only one whose hips were lifting. So after class, she comes up to me very, very apologetic. Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know it was an advanced class. I hope I didn't interrupt too much. I said, oh my God, no, it was amazing. And I told her what happened. And she looks at me with this really deep, intense stare, and she says, I know how to empty my cup. I know how to listen. I know how to be a good student. I know how to follow instructions. After 50 years of hard, dedicated practice, I'm beginning to understand something about beginner's mind. So humble, you know, so beautiful. You know, my eyes got all wet and being a couple tears came down. It's like, wow, thank you. That was so beautiful. So, beginner's mind. You know, and what does that mean? I know how to empty my cup. So you're really ready to just listen and to be present with what's going on and to feel the reality of the situation. So this is the stuff that I'm really hungry for, is finding more of this stuff in the world. And something I really enjoy doing as I teach out in the world is turning people back to those things that are already there in their culture. So many people are looking outside. We are doing it, looking outside of our culture to find something that we're looking for in yoga, right? And so in Japan, they have all of these great traditional forms. Chado or Sado is just one of them, but all these different, what are called dos. The word do in Japanese means something like a path or something that you practice, having a daily practice that you show up for every day, and how that has an effect on your life. And what it means to practice something. It's different than a performance, but the act of practicing. So for the Ashtangis in the room, and I know that what I'm doing doesn't look at all like Ashtanga yoga, but somehow within what I'm doing there is this, I want to touch the heart of Ashtanga yoga because I feel in that place we touch the heart of everything else. And that becomes something more interesting to me, something that's relevant for all of us. That becomes more interesting for me to play with, to share with you guys. The word do as practice, to walk a path and to show up every day. And what is practice? You're improving. You're set out to improve something. It's not just to do it the same way you've always done it, but that's playing something. And that's also fine. It's not like one's right and one's wrong. There's different aspects. But when you sit down to practice, it has a different dynamic than when you are actually playing something. If you're playing tennis with somebody, it's different than practicing, practicing piano versus playing piano. When you're playing, you make a mistake, you don't stop. You sort of do the best you can to keep going and not fall down, right? But when you're practicing, when you stumble like that, what do? So I like to quote Patabi Joyce at that moment and say, he used to say this all the time, and I didn't understand it for years and years and years. And he said, why you rush ahead, you go back. At that moment, when you feel something that you understand needs to be improved, investigated, understood better, stop. Go back. Don't push forwards, ignoring that thing, because then you just leave it there. In fact, it's worse than that. You strengthen it. You support it. You make it bigger each time you do that, and you leave it there. So as soon as you notice these things, they will get big enough where you cannot ignore them anymore if you continue to do that. Eventually it'll boom. They say the universe gives us a little signal. It's like a bell ringing. At first it's not very loud. It's just a little ding. And it gets missed. But it will ring again. And again. And again. And louder. And louder. And louder. And louder. Until it's like bam, 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 bam. But even that, we tend to ignore it. Right? It's the noise we've always heard, but now it's just bigger, and we've sort of slowly gotten used to it, and it's like, okay, this is just what I have to endure. And we have to recognize that as the samskara and say, okay, boom, this is what my practice is showing me. And I have to learn how to understand what it is, and then how to change my behavior to start the process of clearing. We get confused and we think that we want to do yoga. This is what Prashant Iyengar was talking about, and he said, you can't do it. You got to stop doing it. You can use it to heal yourself, but it will not heal yourself just by repetitively doing it. It has the opposite effect, and it's really the comic tragedy, maybe. We think we're doing something good. You show up every day for 30 years doing your practice, but you actually end up with, a terrible injury. And then you continue to try to do yoga to heal the injury. I could tell stories, I don't want to. So I thought, anything? I really welcome, I really don't want to just sit here and talk. I'm capable of it. I could talk for 10 hours. It's but I really much prefer the interaction and anything that's on your mind. And there's been some useful things. It's like you said earlier today about the discovery of the chest, the work of the chest. This was a really big thing for me. And it took me, I started practicing yoga in 1971. And I tried to say it yesterday, there's these things that we bump into. You hear the bell ring, right? It's like a cone, or like a spiral, and ding, and it's really quiet. Ding, ding. In different ways that happens in our life, and you get the same message over and over and over again until finally it catches your attention in a way that you can't ignore it anymore. Well, this thing with the chest lifting was that for me, and it was about 2 years ago with Donna Holloman, who I really appreciate as a teacher. It's a strange thing to me. She's about 75, 76, mid or late 70s years old, and she's trained a lot of people that have become seniors in the yoga world, but she is very much unknown, and I think that was her intent. I think she really likes just being invisible and with her horses and cats and dogs in the middle of the countryside, beautiful place in northern Italy. You can go and study with her. I did a 3-year teacher's training course with her. We met twice a year for a week. We started out with 24 people the first week. The next week there's 12. And then there were some weeks where it was 8 and 12, and some new people came in, and it was like, wow. What a privilege to be with a senior like that in a room of 12 people. And there was about 8 or 12 of us that did the whole thing. And it was a really, really amazing, interesting relationship that developed, working together with partners. When you're working with people who have been trained to know these actions like what we were working with yesterday, and you start using that into more and more interesting, challenging postures. And we would do one-on-ones, and then sometimes two-on-one. And so the idea of one pose, but we've got 4 arms and 4 legs and 2 brains. Now you've got one pose with 6 arms or 8 arms and 5 brains. It's really kind of amazing if all of those brains are organized in the same direction. I had an experience in headstand that was so profound, of 5 people, all of us wearing blindfolds, with just little subtle adjustments of this way, this way, this way, this way, and you sort of slowly organize it until you just really get centered, like a spinning top that looks like it's stationary. It's just so centered and spinning. Something about this. Elaborate. This lifting of the chest was something she was talking about. She was also the one that really gave me the image of the donkey ears. The trochanter adjustment is also from her. And I'd like to get more into the trochanter adjustment today. I feel like it's a really great one. It's almost, I would say, completely universal. There is a slight hesitation I have of calling it 100% universal. I want to find the things that we can do all the time, that are helpful all the time. Because there's something that happens to our mind when we understand, we have confidence that we're heading in the right direction. When you don't have the confidence that you're heading in the right direction, it's difficult to apply your effort. You feel this kind of uncertainty, right? And it's like, but when you really feel it, it's like, and you can go slower, and you stop, and you settle, and you find the position, and then you slowly stabilize it, and then you increase the elongation, and then you start to use more force of the breath, and more intention. It's really powerful. And then you're looking for feedback, and you're learning to read the body. This is what I want to do this morning, and what's on my mind is to review what we did yesterday, but from the position of what we did at the very end of class in Shavasana. And to find that alignment using the floor, to find the ambition of Shavasana. It's kind of a joke, but I mean, try to go there, It's like, what is adjustable? The ambition is adjustable, but we neglect that. It's so powerful. It's like, what is it you're trying to do? Where is it you're trying to go? Can we reorganize that into something that's healthier, more profound, deeper? It's physical, but it's not only physical. The model of the Panchamaya Kosha, the 5 subtle energy bodies, is useful. You start out with the outer circle in this model, and that's the physical body, what's called Annamaya Kosha, which means the body made of cooked rice, the food that you've eaten, the earth, the body made of the earth. Right? More subtle than that is the Pranamaya Kosha, and it's drawn as a smaller circle. It fits inside the Annamaya Kosha, and it's also a form of energy. As cooked rice is a form of energy, it helps us create this physical form, all of it. Not just skin and muscle and bone, but blood and nerves, and lymph, all of it. Everything that's physical is Annamaya Kosha. Pranamaya Kosha is made of prana, which is also energy, but it's a more subtle form of energy, right? It's more subtle than cooked rice. But in the subtlety of it, even though the model draws the Pranamaya Kosha inside the Annamaya Kosha because it's more subtle, the Pranamaya Kosha is actually bigger. The Annamaya Kosha is actually the smallest one. It's the most gross, and so it's drawn as the outer circle. But then inside of that is Pranamaya Kosha, which is actually bigger. And then inside the Pranamaya Kosha is the 2 minds, the Mana Maya Kosha and the Vijnana Maya Kosha. Mana as the gross aspect of mind, and Vijnana Maya Kosha as a very special, subtler form of mind called wisdom. Vijnana is wisdom. So what is wisdom? It's like the stuff your grandmother, who loves you very much, gives you when you're young, or even as you're older. If you're lucky enough to have a grandfather or grandmother in your life, and they love you, they want to help you to what? What is it that they're trying to do? to enjoy your life more, to not suffer so much, to not make the same mistakes that they made, right? This is what we've done as humans with our communication of at first vocal and then later as written language. We're able to get the wisdom of ancients like Patanjali, Shankaracharya, Plato, Euclid. It's amazing what we can access more and more all the time. So hopefully that's creating an evolution into greater and greater wisdom. It's not always apparent, right? But what we have access to is crazy. So, Vijnana is wisdom. So that's the fourth layer. These layers are said to cover the true self, or the soul, what the yogis call Atman, which is really the purpose of yoga, is to have an experience of that deepest sense of the truth of who you are. That's what Namaste means. It's from that place. So, Annamaya Kosha, outer, physical body. Pranamaya Kosha, also of a kind of fuel, life force. Manas as mind. Vijnana as wisdom. Inside of that, when you start to operate, when you start to find your way into the more subtle energy bodies, when you start to use the more subtle energy in your practice, not just the muscles, gross, not just the strong physical effort, but the breath. That's the turning inwards of what yoga is, right? Then you make the prana more important. That becomes the driving force to bring you into yourself. It starts this what's called pratyahara, turning the senses inwards. And then you get to the mind, and you start to use your intellect. And the more rarefied quality of mind, what you call vijnana, or wisdom. It's even finer. In the sense, it's even more powerful. And then inside of that, when you start to access more wisdom, and you start to use more wisdom in your practice, what happens to your life? It gets better, right? This is what we're trying to do. You don't make the same mistakes over and over again. If we live long enough, we've made a lot of stupid mistakes. I don't know about you, I have made so many stupid mistakes. And a lot of them I was repeating over and over again, until you finally go, okay, enough of that. I'm sick of that one. Let's make some other mistakes, And that's sort of it. That's wisdom. And we get closer and closer, and you start, the kind of suffering that you get exposed to is more subtle. Until eventually you experience what they call the fifth layer, which is Anandamaya Kosha. And Ananda means bliss. That's what we're moving towards, is that more frequent experience of bliss. It's possible. It takes training. It's part of, the purpose of our do, or our Tao, or our practice, sadhana, is to find our way into that direction in your practice. To start driving from that deeper place. Then eventually that you're driving from the Anandamaya Kosha and the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And yes, also with manas, intellect, prana, and physical body. Of course, we're still using the physical body, but it's not the leader. It's not the boss. It's just the vehicle. It's like you're driving the car. It's a funny book. You can get on Amazon for about $10. It's a comedian named Swami Biyandananda. Wrote a book called Driving Your Own Karma. It's great. Have you seen it? He's awesome. Really fun. It's like things like driving your own karma is funny, but it's also profoundly right on target. And so inside the Anandamaya Kosha is an empty space, which is where this unnameable, they don't name it. Or it's Atman. Some cultures don't give it a name. We try to give it a name, but don't get hung up on the name. We're trying to find a name for something that's indescribable, which they're saying is our pure consciousness, the pure Buddha mind. And that's actually what yoga is trying to help us experience, is that. And it's from that place that we greet each other when we say Namaste. In that place, the deepest part of the truth of who I am, I recognize that same place in you, and I bow down to that miracle that we share. And that changes us. It changes our behavior. I no longer have this sense of other. Yes, of course, you're a different person than I am, but at the same time, what we share is so big even though it's the smallest circle inside this model, as the pranamaya kosha is bigger than the annamaya kosha, and the manas is bigger than the prana, and the vijnana is bigger than the manas, and ananda is bigger than that. When you get to the center of the center of the center of the center of the center, 5 layers in, and then beyond that, beyond Ananda is the guy's name that wrote the book, the joke. Swami Beyond Ananda. Okay? When you get to that point, it's infinite. And then the thing is, Atman is the individual soul, the smallest, most subtle of subtleties, beyond comprehension, subtle. You touch the infinite, which is the cosmic Brahman. And that's the statement of the ultimate Sama. Samadhi is that recognition that Atman and Brahman are one, not separate. And that we are that. It's like, holy shit, wow. To recognize, to experience the reality of that, where it's not a theory anymore. Just like you find the bones, it's not a theory anymore. It's a felt sense, it's an experience. That's what we're looking for. That changes us. It changes the way we relate to ourselves and to others in the world, which changes the world in a really profound way. And that's, I think, the value of yoga. I think I'll shut up at that point. There's a practice, a spiritual practice called silence. In Sanskrit it's called maunam. And one of the great philosophers, Adi Shankaracharya, talks about the real practice of maunam, or silence, is when you realize that words can no longer touch what it is you're trying to communicate. And the only thing left is to shut up. Not imposed silence. Let's just for a second come back to a comfortable sitting position. And if you want to sit up on something like a prop, if you want to stretch your legs or anything else,